Well, as you heard the President, stay safe, wash your hands, and of course remember to sanitize. And in that regard, maybe kindly we could have a look at what has transpired in regards to the spread of the virus in the last 24 hours. And that is thanks to a report that was released today, or announced today rather. As you can see here, in the last 24 hours, according to the Ministry of Health, we've had 754 tests that have been carried out. And out of the 754, we have 7 confirmed cases. Well, at least there is some good news, whereby we have a total number of 3 recoveries in the last 24 hours. And since the first case was reported here in Kenya, we've had a total of 14 deaths. And, well, hopefully that number stays that way. Well, of course, we have a lot more in regards to the coronavirus. But first, let's have a look at the news highlights.
That the cessation of movement into and out of the Nairobi metropolitan area and the counties of Kilifi, Kwale, and Mombasa that are currently in force shall be extended for a further containment period of 21 days.
Nairobi, Mombasa, Kilifi and Kwale counties to remain in partial lockdown for at least 3 more weeks after President Kenyatta extended containment period for further 21 days as 7 more COVID-19 cases are confirmed. Meanwhile, weatherman issues floods alert as heavy rains continue to wreak havoc across the country. And we look at the weak links in the fight against COVID-19. Once again, welcome to Channel 1 Weekend with me, Richard Munga. And our sign language interpreter tonight is Lucy Maura. Remember that you can always give us your feedback on the news via our social media platforms, that is Twitter and Facebook. And our handle on Twitter is at KBC Channel 1. And of course, as well on Facebook, reach us at KBC Channel 1. Now, to a top story tonight, whereby the cessation of movement in and out of Nairobi, Mombasa, Kilifi and Kwale has been extended for an additional containment period of 21 days. While delivering the 5th presidential address on coronavirus pandemic, President Uhuru Kenyatta also extended the national dusk to dawn curfew for an additional 3 weeks in a bid to stem the spread of the deadly contagion at a time that the country's positive cases have reached a total of 343. Now, amid the strict measures, the president warned that he will not hesitate to institute even more tougher sanctions to further contain the situation. Nancy Okware with our report.
President Uhuru Kenyatta on Saturday announced more measures aimed at reducing the spread of coronavirus as the number of positive cases increased by a further 7 people. Atop these measures include an extension of the cessation of movement in counties deemed hotspots.
That the cessation of movement into and out of the Nairobi metropolitan area and the counties of Kilifi, Kwale, and Mombasa that are currently in force shall be extended for a further containment period of 21 days.
The nationwide 7 p.m. to 5 a.m. curfew has also been extended owing to the increase in the number of cases in the country.
The nationwide dusk to dawn curfew that is currently in force shall also be extended for a further period of 21 days.
The head of state saying that his administration will employ more stringent measures if the situation so deserves.
Sisi tuataka kupunguza yale masharti, lakini hatutasusia kuongeza masharti kama wenzetu wa Kenya hamutaweza kutii yale ambaye tunaelezwa na wale ambao wanahusika, na haswa wataalamu wetu wa kiafya, madaktari wetu.
Sentiments which earned the support of leaders from the most affected regions.
But in my county today, Your Excellency, the graph is going high. We've had to struggle. People don't listen. We will not hesitate when it gets to a point when we tell you escalate the actions to stringent measures so that our people can listen.
Vita hivi tutaweza kushinda tukiwa na nidhamu, tukiwa wazalendo na tufuate yale masharti yote ambayo yameweza kuwekwa na serikali.
Tutaweka masharti makali. Tutawapatia vitu vya kuwasaidia. Lakini baada ya kwisha ni vile nidhamu zetu zenyewe na kutekeleza sisi wenyewe masharti haya ndio itatuokoa.
But with over 17,000 coronavirus samples tested so far, the head of state said the government was in the process of enhancing the capacity to test more people. This even as he dispelled rumors that plans were underway to test a vaccine in Kenya, noting that Kenyan researchers were in collaboration with others globally and the government would only act based on their advice.
Kama kutakuwa na kutafika wakati ambapo hawa wataalamu wetu watatuambia labda wameweza kudevelop vaccine to the point ambapo it shall require human trials, tutawaambia. Kwa hivyo msidanganywe ya kwamba kuna lolote ambalo linaendelea kuhusu testing ya vaccines ambazo hatujui hapa kwetu Kenya.
Further caution Kenyans against the effects of COVID-19. The head of state says the government will from Wednesday next week roll out the National Hygiene Program aimed at creating jobs while making the environment healthier.
The first phase of the National Hygiene Program for the next 30 days will employ some 26,148 workers and eventually grow to over 100,000 young people across the country.
Nancy Okware, Channel 1 News.
Meanwhile, President Uhuru Kenyatta has called on Kenyans living in flood-prone areas to move to higher grounds in the wake of heavy rains that are pounding parts of the country. The president, who was speaking during a presidential briefing on COVID-19, called on Kenyans in areas flagged by Kenya Meteorological Department as risk areas to heed the institution's advisory to avert further calamities. The weatherman has predicted heavy rainfall in various parts of the country over the next 5 days.
It has been about a week of heavy rainfall in various parts of the country, with resultant effects being floods, mudslides, displacements and at worst deaths. In his COVID-19 briefing, President Kenyatta noted that it was imperative for Kenyans, especially in flood-prone areas, to move to higher grounds.
We mourn the 29 Kenyans who have lost their lives in Elgeyo Marakwet and West Pokot, and my administration continues to make every effort to support affected families and communities across the country. We continue to warn our fellow Kenyans that coming out of last year, where the rains were still very heavy and now are heavy once again, the risk of flooding, the risk of mudslides are increasing, and I would request and really plead with all Kenyans to follow the advice that is coming from the Ministry of Interior, that is coming from our meteorological people, that please let us move to higher ground.
While calling on Kenyans to heed the Kenya Meteorological Department's advisory on the rains, the head of state called on relevant authorities to work with affected people to ensure that they are relocated to avert a crisis.
We, on our part, have mobilized the deployment of resources, including rescue personnel from our various security and humanitarian agencies, covering the Kenya Defense Forces, the National Police Service, the Ministry of Special Programs, amongst other agencies, to assist in these affected regions so as to provide emergency response, mitigation, as well as preventative action.
Meanwhile, transport along the busy Sotik-Kisii highway has been paralyzed after River Kipsonoi burst its banks. This forced motorists who ply the highway to seek alternative routes, while others were stranded as they awaited water levels to reduce so that they can access the road.
Tunasubiria tu tuone wangalau kama itafungua ndio tuweze kuvuka. Hiyo ni pesa mingi tunasema kwa kulingana bila mimi ambaye nilikuwa natarajia kwenda nipewe mzigo mwingine. Naona sasa nimepata sala kitu kama 1200.
In Migori, hundreds of families living in Muhuru Beach along Lake Victoria are pleading with the government to help evacuate them to safer grounds following increased backflow experience in the lake. They said destruction caused by the floods is irreparable as some are forced to flee their homes.
zetu zimebomoka, watoto tumebaki nao watoto 5, vile tunaweza kula mna. Tunaomba serikali atusaidie tupate vile tunaweza kujisaidia. Hatuna chakula, hatuna sehemu ya kulala.
The affected families were forced to brave the cold as they could not move to rescue camps following government's directive barring overcrowding to curb the spread of coronavirus. The Kenya Meteorological Department is predicting heavy rains in Lake Victoria Basin, highlands west of the Rift Valley, the Central and South Rift Valley, and the highlands east of the Rift Valley, including Nairobi region. Caroline Kama reporting for Channel 1 News.
Also, the bad blood between top political leaders in Kisumu County played out once again, and this time the Nyando floods being the perfect catalyst. Well, a group led by area Senator Fred Outa lashed out at Kisumu Governor Professor Anyang' Nyong'o, whom they accused of cancelling a meeting that was to be graced by 2 cabinet secretaries over alleged failure to consult his office. The county chief, however, maintains that the said meeting aborted due to bad weather. Now, Achola Simon with that report.
There's likely over 2 years until the next general poll, but the supremacy battle between Kisumu County Governor Professor Peter Anyang' Nyong'o and his ally turned for Kisumu Senator Fred Outa is playing out in the public gallery and perhaps affecting service delivery to the people of Kisumu County. Days of heavy rains have resulted in raging floods in Kano, leaving hundreds of households displaced. The situation prompting action from the national government, where devolution CS Eugene Wamalwa and his water counterpart Cecile Kariuki were expected in Nyando on Saturday morning to assess the scale of the destruction before finding immediate and long-term solutions.
As you know, this is a perennial problem. We have had it every time the rains pound. And we are wishing that the government will take decisive, long-lasting action. Not food relief, not coming to assess this periodic visit. We have seen them before.
But the 2 CS did not show up, citing bad weather. A message to the effect was passed to the public by the governor and the county commission.
Unfortunately, because of bad weather, they could not take off from Nairobi. They have therefore requested us with the county commissioner that they will come another day.
But Senator's camp, which includes County Women Rep Rosa Buyu, that had organized the meeting, was hearing none of it.
There are too many stories. Mara the chopper, Mara bad weather. Of course, we also have friends in Nairobi, and I have direct contact in Nairobi to know whether it's raining or whether there's bad weather or not. The bottom line is they were not able to come because the county commissioner and the governor insisted that no protocol had been followed. Yet National Irrigation Board was actually in touch with the regional commissioner, who actually told us that the county commissioner would be present today.
Yes, it's on government of Kisumu County. He's not going to be able to use the resources of the national government and apply them to be the county support money.
Outa and Buyu insisting that the meeting had been cancelled simply because the governor's office felt left out during the organization of the meeting. The 2 camps nearly coming to fistfights as the partisan crowd cheered on. The supremacy battle aside, the government has finished construction of the Ayeyo Bridge along the Ahero-Kisii Road. The bridge was swept off by the raging floods 2 months ago. The prevailing conditions forcing motorists coming from Kisii, Migori and Homa Bay counties to go all the way to Kericho before coming back to Kisumu.
We came to officially confirm, verify, ascertain that the road is now open for traffic, except that the traffic that is allowed from now is any vehicle that is below 10 tons. That is the small canters, the personal cars, the matatus, the bodabodas, and all those sorts of vehicles. But the heavy vehicles from 10 tons and above, there is a section that is still undergoing curing. That traffic will be allowed from next week on Wednesday.
Achola Simon, reporting for Channel 1 Weekend from Kisumu County.
Moving on, President Uhuru Kenyatta has assented into law the Tax Laws Amendment Bill of 2020, which seeks to protect employees from being sacked or subjected to a pay cut during the coronavirus pandemic. The new tax law amends several statutes in efforts aimed at cushioning the economy as well as Kenyans against the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic.
2 days after the National Assembly approved the Tax Laws Amendment Bill of 2020, paving way to 100% tax relief to employees earning less than 24,000 shillings, President Uhuru Kenyatta on Saturday assented the Tax Law Amendment Bill of 2020 into law. The amendments bill include the raising the threshold of turnover tax to between 1 million to 50 million shillings, so as to exclude small-scale traders from the presumptive tax. The new law further lowers turnover tax rate from 3 to 1%. The amendment law, which mainly targets low-income earners, includes 100% pay-as-you-earn tax relief for employees earning less than 28,000 shillings a month. Those earning above the new threshold will benefit from pay tax reduction from the current 30 to 25%. Similarly, the new act has revised corporation tax to 25%, while non-resident tax on dividends have been adjusted from 10 to 15%. The amendment law lowers the value-added tax from 16 to 14%, a move that is expected to lower the shelf price for basic commodities. The new law has also amended Section 38 of the Retirement Benefits Act to allow access for retirement benefits for the purposes of purchase of residential houses. This is aimed at increasing home ownership in the country as envisaged in the housing pillar under the Big Four agenda. Reporting for Channel 1 News, I'm Gladys Mungai.
Now, the Council of Governors is urging the President not to entertain the proposal by Treasury that is aimed at slashing allocations to the counties. COG Chair Wycliffe Oparanya maintains that county administrations are playing a crucial role in containing the spread of the contagion. The council further warns that the ongoing war will be jeopardized if the counties are deprived of funds.
Governors want key players in the country to appreciate the role played by the county governments. This, according to Council of Governors Chair Wycliffe Oparanya, is especially during this period of COVID-19 pandemic. His sentiments receiving support from Kakamega Senator Cleophas Malala, who vowed to rally his colleagues in Parliament to shoot down any legislation meant to reduce county funds.
This is the time that we should be appreciating the role played by the national government so that this issue of deduction of revenue to county government should be stopped, and the president should not agree to this proposal by the Treasury.
This coming as a group of border operators in Nanyuki went an extra mile to raise funds to buy food for vulnerable families. Through an initiative dubbed Skip Lunch and Help a Needy Family, the Kiembereria border operators said they made the move in a bid to cushion the needy during this period of crisis. In the meantime, police in Busia County have launched manhunt for a man who escaped from supervised quarantine at St. Monica Charcoal Girls High School in Teso South Sub-County. Busia County Commissioner Joseph Kanyeri, who told the escapee to return voluntarily, noted that the man was among 13 people who were arrested in Kocholia for failure to observe COVID-19 compliance guidelines.
Wakimaliza ile quarantine ya lazima, watapewa cheti cha kuonyesha kwamba amepitia quarantine na akona uhuru kurejea nyumbani. Pasipokuwa na cheti, hata nyumbani familia wasimkubali huyu mtu, manake anaweza karetea wagonjwa.
Elsewhere, Australian-owned mining company Base Titanium has donated food and non-food items to be distributed to residents of Likoni sub-county of Mombasa affected by the COVID-19 crisis. While receiving the donation, Likoni Member of Parliament Mishi Mboko said the consignment will go a long way to help those impacted by the effects of COVID-19.
Weza kuangalia tena watu wengine wangapi ambao tutaweza kuwakidhia na chakula kile ambacho kimekuja. Japokuwa kuna oda sasa imefanyika, na nashukuru watu wengi wanavaa barakoa kwa sababu tuliweza kudistribute hizi maski kadhaa pale, lakini pia bado wakati hizi siku za kazi kuanzia Jumatatu mpaka Ijumaa bado kunakuwa na challenge kwa sababu watu ni wengi sana.
And Kericho Governor Paul Chepkonyi has officially launched the testing of COVID-19 at Kemri Walter Reed Laboratories in Kericho. The launch is now a major boost for mass testing across the country as the facility can test 2,000 samples a day.
There are two such equipment, with a capacity of conducting 2,000 tests per day. There are also 8 other equipment that can test up to 6,000 samples in a 24-hour shift, bringing the total number of tests that can be done and conducted here per day to 8,000.
Beatrice Getonyenge-Tich, Channel 1 News.
That story will take us to a fast break of the night, but don't go too far as we have a lot more lined up for you. See you shortly.
Virusi vya korona vinazidi kuenea haraka kote ulimwenguni, na kwa sasa hakuna dawa au chanjo ya kuzuia. Husambaa wakati vijitone kutoka kwa mtu aliyeambukizwa vinaporuka akiongea, kukohoa au kupiga chafya. Vijitone hivi hutua kwenye sehemu ambazo mikono hushika na huwezi kuviona, lakini hata kama huvioni haimaanishi kuwa hakuna, na unaweza kuambukizwa unapogusa uso wako, pua, mdomo au macho. Ili kusaidia kuzuia kuenea kwa virusi hivi, sote tunahitajika kufanya mambo matano. 1. Fuata hatua hizi: kuosha mikono yako mara kwa mara na sabuni na maji kwa angalau sekunde 40. 2. Funika mdomo wako na kiwiko wakati wote unapokohoa au kupiga chafya. 3. Usishike uso wako. 4. Epuka sehemu zenye watu wengi. Weka umbali salama baina yako na wenzako. 5. Kaa nyumbani ukiweza, hasa ikiwa una dalili zozote za ugonjwa. Kwa maelezo zaidi tembelea www.who.int.
Eternal Father, I offer you the body and the blood.
This weekend on KBC Channel 1.
Salma, nikuulize.
Naam.
Wamkumbuka Mzee Konde?
Mzee Konde wa hii shamba tunaoishi hapa. Yule aliyokufa.
Hasani alikuwa ofisini juzi. Asema ajua siri yote kuhusu hii shamba. Sasa ni maneno gani Hasani anayojua?
Baba yuko wapi?
Baba alikuwa aje, lakini ampatikana na dharura kidogo.
Mama, mimi nilijua tu. Nilijua istosha, nimemuota kwenye ndoto.
Mimi wazo langu lilikuwa kwa akae kule huko miezi 6 hata mwaka mpaka akili yake itakapokuwa sawa sawa.
Kwani hiyo ndio suluhisho mume wangu?
Una lazima nifanye kazi katika hiyo nyumba mama. Wajua vizuri sana hao ndio wamefanya kwamba shamba yetu imepotea.
Welcome back to Channel 1 Weekend. Now, with Kenya having recorded 343 positive COVID-19 cases, including 14 fatalities, a majority of Kenyans continue to defy the precautionary guidelines issued by the government. Now, Safina Cheng-Ouma reports on how the defiance is now jeopardizing efforts by the government to contain the spread of the contagious virus.
As the death toll in positive cases of coronavirus continue to surge in the country, a majority of Kenyans are proving to be the weakest link in efforts to contain the spread of the global pandemic. Many continue to defy the precautionary guidelines issued by the government with reckless abandon, oblivious of the risks involved. Residents of Nakuru County are a worried lot after it emerged that a number of public service vehicle operators are floating directives aimed at preventing the spread of coronavirus in the country. According to the residents, even with the matatu industry being cited as the weakest link in efforts to contain COVID-19, a majority of operators do not adhere to the set directives, especially during rush hours.
Watu wa matatu nao pia wanateka advantage masaa kama ya jioni sababu ya kafio ama masaa mbaya, unapata pia fuatilia ile jukumu ya kubeba watu 8, wanabeba watu zaidi ya watu 8. Na sababu abiria nao wako na harakati ya kwenda kwa manyumba zao, unapata pia wanakubali kubeba kama excess.
Wafanyikazi wenye wanakuja hapa kwa stage, wao hata waja comply na vile serikali inataka. Mwingine hawa hata hana uniform, hana hata vitu za kazi, hana hata hii kitu kama hii face mask, hana hata sanitizer ya kusanitize abiria, na tumefukuzwa sisi wenye tuna comply, si ndio tumefukuzwa. Hao wengine ni kama tu hii kitabu inaitwa Animals Farm.
They say that there are numerous complaints to the SACCO's management have been ignored and are now calling on the government to intervene and take immediate action. Meanwhile, a week after Kajiado County Governor Joseph Olelenku reopened all livestock markets in Kajiado County, it's business as usual with hundreds of traders operating in total disregard of the government's directives to curb the spread of the contagious coronavirus. At Eastbill Market, for instance, where Kenyan traders mingle with their Tanzanian counterparts, there are no hand-washing points. Traders spotted without face masks while they mingle freely without observing social distancing. This unfortunate state of affairs happening even after the county governor urged the traders to adhere to the set government directives, with COVID-19 cases surging in the county.
Napongeza serikali yetu ya county kwa kushika watu jana kwa sababu wasiokuwa na mask hapo kwa soko. Nimeshukuru sana.
The situation is, however, different in Narok County after the county government moved to close all open-air markets indefinitely a week after they were reopened, alleging that the traders failed to meet the laid-down regulations to combat COVID-19.
While we recognize the need to ease the economic pain that our people are undergoing, it has become evident that the reopening of the market will pose added health risk to our people.
For Channel 1 News, I'm Safin Aching Oma.
Meanwhile, authorities in Ruiru Sub-County today took the coronavirus message literally to the people touring Ruiru and Githurai markets, as well as various supermarkets in the area, in a bid to educate area residents on the government guidelines that are meant to contain the spread of COVID-19. The region, ranked as one of the most densely populated areas, is among actually those that have reported positive cases.
At Ruiru and Githurai markets in Kiambu County, this group of government officials was here for a noble cause. The group, led by the Deputy County Commissioner Geoffrey Githenji, traversed through supermarkets and open-air markets, engaging in a variety of activities aimed at enlightening and sensitizing members of the public on measures aimed at curbing the spread of coronavirus. The project, spearheaded by Kiambu County government, will see the public and traders acquire information on government directives such as social distancing and maintaining hygiene so as to mitigate COVID-19.
To ensure we keep distance, we consider everyone as a suspect. Na tukishirikiana na wananchi wenzetu wazalendo, tutaweza kushinda hii vita. So places waweze kuhakikisha ya kwamba wameweza kuvaa face mask, na face mask inavaliwa kwa njia ile inayofaa. Wengi unaona wanaiweka kwa shingo, wengine wanaiweka kwa kisogo, lakini face mask inapaswa kuvaliwa kwa njia ile inafaa.
Githenji says the move was necessitated by the realization that area residents are not diligently following guidelines despite the area being densely populated.
Ruiru kama sub-county iko na watu zaidi ya 1491, kumaanisha ndio town ama urban center ambaye iko ya 4 kubwa ikifuatia Nairobi, Mombasa na Nakuru.
Reporting for Channel 1 News, I'm Jackie Wambiru.
Now, the government is considering the reopening of selected hotels, eateries and restaurants across the country in an effort to restore the economy. Speaking at State House, Nairobi, President Uhuru Kenyatta said the Ministry of Health was developing protocols that would inform applicable guidelines, including mass testing of staff in those facilities, as well as maintenance of high levels of hygiene before such an undertaking.
In efforts geared towards stemming the spread of the coronavirus in the country, government introduced a myriad of measures, including closure of bars, as well as limited operations in restaurants and eateries that were directed to only offer takeaway services.
Kwa sahi kazi iko chini, na tunahofia sisi watu tumeajiriwa tunaenda nyumbani, tukose kitu ya kukula, tunategemea hii kazi.
Tunafanya ni ya kwamba wale ambao wanaingia kama wateja tunaweza kuwauzia chakula take away. Kwa hivyo hakuna mteja ambaye ameruhusiwa kuweza kukaa.
Though a noble move, the hospitality industry has taken a hit, coupled with a dusk to dawn curfew and cessation of movement in 5 counties.
Among people who love seafood. So we have found that we would have continued, people still would have come, but we find it is not in public interest for us to continue opening because we expose our customers as well as our staff.
In his address to the nation on Saturday, President Uhuru Kenyatta revealed that plans were underway to reopen selected restaurants, eateries and hotels across various counties.
One immediate step from the work done so far is that we shall allow a few restaurants and eateries in selected counties that show the highest levels of health regulation compliance and the ability to arrange for employee testing to undertake minimal operations while maintaining measures that mitigate against the spread of coronavirus. The Cabinet Secretary of Health will in due course be announcing and release the protocols that we shall expect these facilities to abide by.
However, for the select few, the Ministry of Health is developing protocols that will inform guidelines to be fulfilled forehand, which include testing of staff and maintenance of high levels of hygiene.
Any report by the public or authorities that these establishments that we shall be reopening are not following the laid down measures and protocols will lead to their instant closure and indeed follow-up prosecutions.
The move is aimed at supporting the economy, with the global statistics indicating that over 25 million persons are likely to lose their jobs owing to the COVID-19 domino effect.
We'll reopen our economy, but this must be in a way that does not endanger many thousands of lives.
Regina Manyara-Gitao reporting for Channel 1 News.
A section of Muslim faithful today commenced observing the holy month of Ramadan. Chief Qadi Ahmed Mukhtar announced April 25th as the official start of the holy month of Ramadan after the Muslim community in Kenya failed to sight the crescent on Thursday evening. Council of Imams and Preachers of Kenya Organizing Secretary Sheikh Mohammed Khalifa has urged Muslims to avoid communal prayers in mosques and instead pray in their houses and observe the requisite procedures.
Muslims across the country have been urged to adhere to the curfew and guidelines issued by the Ministry of Health to help in combating the COVID-19 pandemic as they observe the holy month of Ramadan. Council of Imams and Preachers of Kenya Organizing Secretary Sheikh Mohammed Khalifa has urged Muslims to conduct prayers and rituals at home.
Kumekuwa na curfew ambapo tumezoea kuswali swala za jamaa msikitini, tumezoea kufuturu kwa pamoja, tumezoea kuswali tarawehe, lakini kwa kuwa hii Ramadhani ya mwaka huu iko tofauti na miaka mingine, hatuna budi kufuata ile hali iliyopo.
While issuing his goodwill message to Muslim faithful, President Uhuru Kenyatta urged Muslims to observe guidelines issued by the Ministry of Health.
I take this opportunity to call on all Kenyans from yesterday to wish me or to join me in wishing our Muslim brothers and sisters a blessed holy month of Ramadan. They will observe this period, as we have stated, within the guidelines given by the Ministry of Health. And as I said, over the Easter period, this time we may be forced to celebrate in our homes, but I believe that those prayers will ultimately be received by God Almighty, and He will help us overcome the pandemic.
Khalifa also asked well-wishers to support the less fortunate during the period, since the pandemic has rendered most people jobless.
Tunaomba kupitia kwa ofisi ya rais, hili jambo la vyakula, especially vyakula, huu si wakati wa kuongeza bei, huu ni wakati wa kusaidiana. Si lazima, hatusemi wafanye biashara watoe vyakula bure, wapunguze ile nyongeza walioiweka ya bei, wafanye bei nafuu bei ambayo kwamba maskini yoyote ataweza kununua.
His call coming as a section of Muslim faithful commenced observing the holy month yesterday. On Thursday, the Chief Qadi announced that April 24th is the 30th and the last day of the month of Sha'ban, the 8th month of the Islamic calendar, and therefore Saturday marks the beginning of the 30 days of fasting. But according to the Qadi, those who started fasting on Friday have not erred, provided they fast for not less than 29 days or more than 30 days. Qadi said moon sighting differences between regions is a common phenomenon resulting from various circumstances which border weather and geographical differences.
Now, as the world grapples with the coronavirus pandemic, President Uhuru Kenyatta says the country must not lose track of the collective war against other diseases that continue to cause human suffering. In his statement to mark World Malaria Day, the head of state says all must reflect on the progress made in the fight against malaria, even as implementation of interventions to end the disease in Africa by the year 2030 continues.
President Uhuru Kenyatta, who also serves as the chairperson of the African Leaders on Malaria Alliance, is calling on Kenyans and the Africans at large to strike a balance between response to COVID-19 and sustaining efforts against existing health threats such as malaria. Uhuru says Africa must focus on building technology platforms and data capacity to combat COVID-19 and sustain the gains made in the fight against malaria.
I do believe that with accelerated action and new models to deal with the disease, we can meet the bold and ambitious targets set in the catalytic framework to end AIDS, TB, and to eliminate malaria in Africa by the year 2030.
The head of state says African nations must endeavor to end malaria, which has ravaged communities for decades and is considered to be largely an African problem within the sub-Saharan Africa.
This, I believe, will enhance the sharing and transparency of the country malaria scorecards for accountability and action, and promote African-led malaria research and development, leveraging on existing African research institutions. The aim of this strategy is to ensure that all our citizens in all spheres of life and at all levels are aware of the malaria situation and are also empowered to act.
Accounting for 93% of global malaria cases, according to the head of state, Kenya has significantly lowered malaria prevalence from a high of 6 million infections to 4.6 million over the last 10 years. This progress has been attributed to the support and cooperation between the government, development partners, and our frontline health providers. The head of state further says in many African countries, malaria is the leading cause of hospital visits, which exerts unbearable financial pressure on households, and as such, Africans must commit to end deaths brought about by malaria. According to the head of state, COVID-19 pandemic is a hurdle that risks stalling or at worst rolling back the gains made in the fight against malaria in Africa, owing to the pressure the pandemic has put on health systems. Global malaria statistics indicate that in the year 2000, approximately 839,000 deaths were as a result of malaria infections. In the last 10 years, however, through increased resourcing, the world has been able to cut these deaths by 50%, an indication that malaria can actually be defeated. For Channel 1 News, I'm Gladys Mungai.
Also, the coronavirus outbreak necessitated consequential measures to contain its spread, which included closure of learning institutions, a move that affected thousands of learners across the country. Embakasi East Member of Parliament Babu Owino is now challenging the Ministry of Education to ensure that national examinations are set based on only what has been covered in the syllabus.
Learning institutions countrywide remain closed as a precautionary measure to avert the spread of COVID-19. Thousands of learners have been affected, with the government's efforts to initiate digital learning facing major infrastructural challenges, especially for those residing in remote areas. Questions now abound over the state of preparedness of candidates who are expected to sit for this year's national examinations. Embakasi East Member of Parliament Babu Owino now challenging the Ministry of Education to ensure that national exams are set based on only what has been covered in the syllabus.
KCPE and KCSE should only test what has been covered in the syllabus. And as the Secretary General of Kenya Young Parliamentarians, the Cabinet Secretary, Education, Professor George Albert Magoa Omore, must submit to my office those exam papers in advance so that I can verify if they have tested what has not been taught.
In his statement on behalf of the Kenya Young Parliamentarians Association, the legislator commended efforts put in place by the government to contain the spread of COVID-19, but underscored the need to assist Kenyans who are now being faced with a financial crisis courtesy of the global pandemic.
We appeal to the landlords and landladies not to harass tenants. Understand tenants are facing financial crisis due to job losses and loss in business.
The association also wants the youth to be represented in the National Emergency Response Committee on COVID-19.
KYPA, we entirely associate with the current Pandemic Response and Management 2020 bill by the Kenya Young Parliamentarians Association Chairman and Nairobi Senator Honorable Johnston Sakaja, and it's in line with the current COVID-19 predicament and remedy mechanism.
For Channel 1 News, I'm Safin Acheng Oma.
Well, always remember that your feedback on the news is always appreciated here at KBC Channel 1 Our Weekend. That means you can send us your feedback on all the stories or other comments via social media platforms on Facebook, KBC Channel 1, on Twitter at KBC Channel 1, and you can also tweet me on my personal handle at Munga_Mbatia. Well, now we're going to take a short break, but more news coming to you after the break. See you shortly.
Who choose to read their Bible daily, they become wiser and they become stronger than the people who don't read their Bibles. So when you choose hard, difficult things, you become a natural leader. He brings us to church to introduce to us another higher level of relationship that is called a faith relationship. You are also a solution to somebody else's problem. You cannot be the only problem all the time.
Join Pastor Jimmy Masharia on The Master's Touch this Sunday from 8 a.m. on KBC Channel 1.
On the next episode of Behind...
Welcome back, and moving on, 7 people sustained serious injuries after a tree fell on their houses in the city's Kibagari slums following heavy overnight rains. Several families have been rendered homeless following the incident, with the slum dwellers now calling on authorities to cut down trees in the area that pose a danger to those living in the vicinity.
This is what was left after a giant tree fell on these structures. Debris and battered corrugated iron sheets. The events preceding the incident, as told by the victims, as graphical as is disturbing.
Tuweza kusikia mtetemeko fulani, tunaweza kushangaa utakimbilia wapi, ni kushoto, kulia, ama utaenda juu ama chini, huwezi jua, lakini tungeweza kusimama, na penye tulisimama tukasikia mti imetoka nyuma yetu, kwa sababu mimi nakaa hapa, mimi ni mkazi hapa.
Mtoto kabla jana kuangalia ndio tukasikia mlio imekuwa zaidi. Nikachukua watoto wadogo tukakimbia. Sasa ila kutoka nje ndio tukapata ni mti imeanguka.
Jana wakati wa 6 ndio hii msanga ya mti ilianguka, na wakati ilianguka ilaria nyumba 27, tukakuja kufanya rescuing.
6 people were rushed to hospital, where 4 were released upon treatment, with 2 critical cases still in hospital.
Mmoja aligongwa kidole na akaumizwa pande hii, na mimi nimeumizwa pande hii, na huyo mwingine akatoka tu vizuri. Tukaenda hospitali Eagles, tukatimbiwa na tukarudi, na hata kuna wengine wawili.
Watu 6 ndio ambao walikuwa affected, tukapeleka wote hospitali ya Eagles. Waine wakakuwa discharge, walikuwa na minor injuries, but up to now saizi wawili wako ward, bado wana undergo treatment.
The residents expressing apprehension amid fears that the remaining trees towering over their houses portend a potential disaster.
Naomba ikiwezekana watupe nafasi, kama wanaona hawezi kuja kukata, nitoe watu yangu wakati hiyo miti yangu.
Last evening's incident, according to the resident, was not the first and may not be the last.
Well, it's quite unfortunate since in 2005, a similar occurrence happened right behind me, claiming the lives of 5 people and leaving quite a number homeless.
205 kuna ingine ilianguka ikaua mtu. Hii jana, it is by good luck tunasema ilianguka kama 6. Ingeanguka saa 1 kama watu wameingia kwa nyumba sababu ya curfew, ingepata watu wengi sana kwa nyumba.
Ungeona mtu mwenye ameangukiwa, so ilibidi watu wakuja wakatekate. Kwa hiyo harakati ya kukata walipata nyanyangu wameangukiwa.
Niliongea nikaambia hao watu wa Nairobi School watoe hiyo miti, walikata. Wakasema sisi tulikuta miti. Nikaongea serikali tusaidie, serikali haikusaidia. Mpaka sasa tena hii imefanyika.
But amid the uncertainty, the Kabagari slum dwellers gather in small groups as they discuss how to avert future incidents, even as they await assistance from authorities.
Well, with the onset of the heavy rains, the challenges of COVID-19, the over 40,000 residents of the Kibagari slums are now making a clarion call to the government to heed to their cries. Reporting for Channel 1 News, I'm Sarafina Robbie.
Important to remember that as much as we are trying to stay safe from the coronavirus, also remember to stay safe from the rains and follow the meteorological department instructions on how, of course, to ensure that you're not a victim of that, as well as lightning that has occasioned the rains earlier this week. Now, moving on, world leaders have rallied around the United Nations for an initiative to help most vulnerable countries gain access to vaccines, diagnostics and treatment tools for the novel coronavirus as soon as the cases emerge. The development coming as the number of those infected by COVID-19 across the globe rose to 2.8 million people, with over 812,000 people having recovered from the illness, with at least 198,000 fatalities.
World leaders have rallied around the United Nations for an initiative to help the most vulnerable countries gain access to vaccines, diagnostics and treatment tools for the coronavirus as soon as they emerge. But noticeably absent were leaders from the United States, which is the hardest hit country in the world, and China, where the virus first appeared. This as the World Health Organization announced the launch of a new effort to accelerate the development of vaccines, diagnostics and therapeutics in response to the coronavirus pandemic. Britain is to start trials to see whether plasma collected from donors who have recovered from COVID-19 could be an effective treatment for patients who are severely unwell with the disease. The United Kingdom will host a summit on June 4th to encourage the international community to come together to support the development of a COVID-19 vaccine. Meanwhile, the death toll in the United States surpassed 52,000 amid more than 925,000 cases. Elsewhere, the Indian government allowed a limited reopening of shops in neighborhoods and residential areas from Saturday, more than a month after the nation went into lockdown to curb the spread of the coronavirus. Meanwhile, China has reported no new deaths from the coronavirus in the last 10 days as attention turned to northern provinces bordering Russia. The vast majority of new cases in the country have been imported, according to health authorities. And Africa's coronavirus cases have surged 43% in the past week, but countries are dangerously behind in the global race for scarce medical equipment, with tens of nations having no ventilators at all. South Africa plans to reopen its agriculture sector and allow some manufacturing and retail to resume as the country balances the need to restart economic output and curb the spread of the new coronavirus. For Channel 1 News, I am Emily K. Bade.
Country has witnessed upscaling of fumigation targeting hotspot areas as part of the efforts aimed at containing the spread of COVID-19. But how effective is wide area spraying in cleaning contaminated surfaces? Let's have an answer to that.
Our day-to-day activities when we are doing disinfection in our institutions, we are using sodium hypochlorite as recommended by the World Health Organization. And the concentration is 0.5% to give us the product that is going to be used to do proper disinfection. And in our domestic settings at homes, we are recommending people to use bleach. Bleach is normally the ordinary jig. You can take, if you're using jig from maybe repackaged jig, packed jig from the stores or shops, you can take 1 cup of jig to 5 liters of water for purpose of doing disinfection. If you're using for hand washing at home, because that's quite strong, you can use 1 cup of jig to 10 liters of water. That makes the hands clean and you reduce the microbial load. And that's why we insist on disinfection using the available disinfectants at our homes.
Now let's have a look at what has been happening around the counties, whereby a police officer was ran over by a motorist in Nakuru County while erecting a roadblock to enforce coronavirus curfew has been interred in Masaba, South Kisii County. Police Constable Ambrose Magoma Nyachwaya died on the spot after he was knocked by a speeding private vehicle driver. Details of this and other highlights in the County News Roundup.
The deceased police officer was accorded reviewed official and customary burial ceremonies at his Gatere village home in Remakanda location due to existing COVID-19 measures. Magdalene Mora, the widow to the deceased, petitioned the National Police Service to ensure justice for her husband and family.
Mzee wangu alikuwa mzee ambaye anapenda kazi yake na alikuwa anafanya kazi ya serikali. Sasa vile alikufa akiwa katika line of duty, naomba tu serikali ikaweze kunifanyia justice. Naamini ya kwamba hii serikali ambayo mzee wangu alikuwa anaitumikia kwa uaminifu itaweza kunitendea haki, kwa sababu tumempoteza mtu ambaye alikuwa ndiye a pillar to our family.
Elsewhere, police in Samburu have launched a probe into the mysterious killing of a renowned businessman from the area. According to police, preliminary investigations indicate that the deceased, who was in the company of 3 other people, was accosted by 3 unidentified people before he was killed in cold blood. The attackers allegedly took off with 50,000 shillings, which the businessman had at the time.
Askari wako kwa hii forest ambaye ameingia forest ya Kirisha, anafuata hiyo wakora. Na tunahakikisha kwamba tunafuata mpaka tupate.
Meanwhile, the Kenya Medical Research Institute has finally been issued with a title deed for a contentious 100-acre piece of land in Kirinyaga. The move paves way for the institution to fast-track setting up of its research laboratory, which had been stalled owing to land ownership disputes. And a middle-aged man in Olkalu town created a scene at the J.M. Kariuki Memorial County Referral Hospital after he stormed the facility to demand the release of his wife, who has been quarantined at Nyandaro High School.
Mr. Kadu Waga, that's one thing. I don't like cowards. I don't entertain cowards.
Joseph Madenge claims the move to quarantine his wife, who had traveled from Migori County, was ill-intentioned and unnecessary.
Now she is detained here at Nyandaro High School, a few miles from here. And from what she's telling me is that they're sleeping in a classroom. There's no food. You have to take food to her. Like now, I've not taken lunch because I've been busy here pursuing matters. I've not taken lunch. I've not taken lunch to her. So she's still inside there. I don't know whether she'll take lunch after law.
Finally, veteran photojournalist John Baraza was laid to rest at his home in Taito Village, Sitatunga Ward in Trans Nzoia County. Baraza, who was until his death an employee of South African Broadcasting Corporation, SABC, died on April 21st at his home in Syokimau.
Amesomesha watoto wake, amesomesha watoto wa nyumbani kwetu, amesomesha watoto wa ndugu zake, Yaani amefanya mambo ambao hata sijui niseme nini. Mume wangu amekuwa msaada mkubwa. Na ninashukuru Mungu kwa sababu ya maisha yote ambayo tumekaa na yeye.
Yusuf Farah, Channel 1 News.
Now, the global outbreak of COVID-19 has not only claimed lives and left others fighting to recover, but also presented several other challenges like massive job losses and businesses closing down. This invisible enemy that is COVID-19 has seen people follow guidelines akin to wartime laws to the letter. Safina Chengo sought to find out how Kenyans are adjusting to the new normal.
It is a perfect view of the Nairobi metropolitan. What is imperfect, perhaps, is that the daily hustle and bustle of this ever-busy city has now been slowed down by the coronavirus outbreak. The streets are less populated, courtesy of the stay-home order. A few people are spotted moving up and down, perhaps playing catch-up. A majority seem deep in thought on how to sail through this murky season as they consume news of how the blade, that is COVID-19, continues to get sharper.
This disease is not a joke. If we continue to behave normally, this disease will treat us abnormally.
The world is now like a battleground. We are all fighting one enemy, coronavirus. Everyone is an important soldier in this war. We fight apart, but not alone. Putting on face masks, sanitizing, washing hands with soap and running water. Anything it will take to keep us all safe. Nothing is taken to chance.
Most priority area is prevention, and this comes through one, staying at home as the government has directed. The second thing is using the hygiene measures that have been developed by the government and WHO.
What is no longer a secret, however, is how the global fight against COVID-19 has drastically changed the way of life. The economic paralysis has left many struggling to gather strength to fight coronavirus. Life is hard.
If this continues for more than it is now, I don't know whether we can survive it.
Tunasumbuka sana kwa sababu sasa hivi makazi zimepotea, hakuna kibarua, tunashinda mtaa hakuna chakula, rent hakuna, kuna shida mingi.
Sasa tujui tutakuwa aje juu kiendelea hivi, hakuna chakula, kulipa nyumba ndio hiyo, hakuna kuuza juu by that siku hizi customer kutubaia imekuwa ni kazi ngumu sana.
Many are now faced with the dilemma of whether to fight COVID-19 or fight for their own survival.
Itafika mahali hata sasa corona ndio itatumaliza, njaa ndio itatumaliza.
Saizi tunaambiwa tuvae mask. Hizi mask tunaambiwa ni 3 hours, 6 hours or a day utupe. Watu tumekaa kwa nyumba hata chakula hatuna. Sasa ya mask tutatoa wapi?
Tunakufa moyo. Naona ni kama mimi nakufa the next minute. Hata naogopa kukutana na mwenzangu. Hata nikiwa na mwenzangu anatoka nje, naogopa aenda kufa.
The crisis forcing people to reassess where they place their trust. The nation coming to love simple chores that never seemed important.
Something may arise which you never expected. It's always good to have something that you have saved to cater for such a day.
Nimeona hii maisha ni maisha fupi sana. Siku yoyote unaweza ondoka kwa hii duniani. Juu hii corona kuna wenye wamepoteza maisha yao.
Some, however, believe the government can do more to avert their agony.
Wangekuwa wameshatoa pesa ya kusaidia watu. Wale watu wote wako na huduma namba. Kila mtu apewe 10,000, wakae kwa nyumba mwezi moja.
Watu wamekaa kwa manyumba wanangoja corona ishe. Haitaisha. Itaisha serikali ikichukua hatua.
But others peg their hope on God.
Tumulilie Mungu. Juu mimi naona ni kama pigo kwa Mungu amekasirika. Sasa ningeomba tu rais wetu kama anatusikiza, ajaribu kufungulia makanisa, watu tuombe, hata kama ni kukesha tutaamua.
But what cuts across is that we all need to bravely stand together to win the war.
Millions of people have been infected by coronavirus.
which has also claimed thousands of lives. As we cling our hope on the numbers of those who have recovered from this global pandemic, everyone has now been cornered in their small corner of the world. Questions linger. How long will this take? What are we dealing with exactly? I know it's trying times, but we all have to do our part to be able to win this war. Stay safe. For Channel 1 News, I'm Safin Acheng Ouma.
Now let's move on to Marta Sports, whereby Gor Mahia CEO Mondi Aduda has revealed he has not given up in his bid to win the presidential seat in the forthcoming Football Kenya Federation elections. The elections, which have been postponed twice by the Sports Disputes Tribunal, will likely be held after the country contains the coronavirus pandemic. Aduda has revealed that he will outline his plans for Kenyan football immediately the new date for the exercise is confirmed, and has warned those spreading rumors that he had given up on his intention to vie. Aduda is among the 5 officials who are keen to unseat incumbent President Nick Mwendwa. Others include former President Sam Nyamweya, who officially declared his interest earlier this week, former AFC Leopards chairman Alex Ole Magelo, ex-Vihiga County Governor Moses Akaranga, and former FKF NEC member Twaha Mbarak. And English Premier League side Chelsea has announced that no cards will be placed on the first team squad, and instead it has asked players to make donations to their chosen charities. Meanwhile, Moroccan midfielder Hakim Ziyech has confirmed he still plans to officially join Chelsea on July 1st, despite the uncertainty around football following the coronavirus outbreak. Earlier this month, it was reported that Chelsea's players were in talks about taking a 10% pay cut as part of their response to the coronavirus outbreak, with director Marina Granovskaya holding discussions with their players to support other charitable causes. The Blues have also confirmed that they will not be taking advantage of the government's job retention scheme, and all full-time and casual staff will be paid in full. The club also plans to reimburse supporters who made non-refundable travel arrangements to go to Germany for their Champions League clash with Bayern Munich on March 18th. Meanwhile, Hakim Ziyech says he will be a Chelsea player as planned on July 1st and is not concerned his move to Stamford Bridge could be impacted by the ongoing coronavirus pandemic. The 27-year-old signed a 5-year deal ahead of his move to West London after Chelsea agreed a £33.3 million fee with Ajax for the attacking midfielder back in February. However, following the coronavirus, it remains unclear when the football season will resume after its suspension in early March. The Premier League has yet to make a decision on the restart of the domestic season, whereas the Eredivisie has confirmed the season has been cancelled. Ziyech's 2019-2020 season is now over, as is his career at Ajax, and he believes he will still be joining Chelsea officially at the start of July. Finally, the Blues intend on taking up the option to extend Olivier Giroud's contract by a year to prevent him from becoming a free agent. The 33-year-old's deal is due to expire on June 30th, but by extending it, Chelsea will be able to ask for a transfer fee if they decide to sell him. He was close to joining Inter Milan in January, but Chelsea blocked the move because they were unable to sign a replacement for the French World Cup winner. Giroud started only 2 Premier League games in the first half of the season, but played more regularly after Tammy Abraham was injured in January. Now, finally, Liverpool's Champions League clash against Atletico Madrid will be the focus of an inquiry by the Liverpool City Region City Council amid concerns it could have led to a higher number of coronavirus infections in that area. The game, held on March 11th, was attended by 52,000 supporters, and within 10 days, the UK government had banned sporting events in a bid to stop the spread of the virus. Meanwhile, the Dutch football season has come to an end after the Eredivisie abandoned the current campaign. It means no side will be awarded the league title, while relegation and promotion won't also take place. On March 11th at Anfield, 52,000 football fans attended a Champions League match pitting host Liverpool against Atletico Madrid, in which the hosts went down 3-2 to the visitors. This march, attended by 3,000 fans from Madrid, which was under partial lockdown, will be the focus of an investigation commissioned by Liverpool City Region Mayor John Anderson to understand what impact it may have had on the spread of coronavirus. There was a sharp spike of COVID-19 cases in the city 3 weeks after the march, with the city having 1,250 recorded cases so far, and more than 270 people have died within the area. The march was the last major fixture to have taken place in England, with the Premier League, English Football League and Women's Super League suspending proceedings less than 48 hours later. There has been no confirmed link between the march and any cases of coronavirus, but earlier this week the government's Deputy Chief Scientific Advisor Angela McLean said it was an interesting hypothesis worthy of further study. Also, the Dutch Eredivisie season has been ended with immediate effect, meaning league leaders Ajax have been denied the title. There will also be no promotion to the Dutch Eredivisie or relegation from the top flight following an agreement reached over a video conference call between the Dutch FA and the clubs. Ajax was top of the Eredivisie table ahead of AS Alkmaar on goal difference, with 9 rounds of matches to play when the season was suspended. The Eredivisie has put Ajax forward to go directly to the playoffs of the Champions League, with AS Alkmaar playing in the second qualifying round. That placed Feyenoord goes straight into the group stage of the Europa League, with PSV and Willem qualifying for the second qualifying round for the competition. The Eredivisie women has also been cancelled without a champion being crowned. Holland have currently seen 4,000 people die due to COVID-19. Well, that brings us to the end of the sports news, but in other matters, just as an update, Wolverhampton Wanderers forward, that is Diogo Jota, has been crowned the FIFA King. What am I talking about, you wonder? All Premier League stars were holding an invitational FIFA tournament whereby we had different players from different clubs participating. Diogo Jota, of course, beat Liverpool's Trent Alexander-Arnold to the title. Well, now that brings us to the end of Channel One Weekend tonight. But remember, you can always get more news and updates on our website. That is www.kbc.co.ke. And as I mentioned earlier, platforms, Twitters, send us a message on Facebook at KBC Channel One. Well, that's it for tonight, but have a good night. I'm Richard Munga, and our sign language interpreter has been Lucy Maura. Good night.